Hello, everyone, and welcome to Accessibility News. Tracy Delisle is joining me again. We're going to have a little conversation today about some new things that we're seeing with regards to accessibility, whether it be physical businesses, online, and just kind of what's happening around the great western part of the United States. Tracy, how are you today?
I'm doing great, and I'm always happy to be a Californian until we see some crazy codes. But always great to share what I'm hearing in these moment-by-moment changes that are coming into effect. But yeah, excited to be here today, and always looking forward to giving all the good info that we have to give on accessibility. All
So,
of
what new and crazy is happening in the great state of California this week that you've come across?
Well, the thing that I yesterday we were able to have a in-person meeting that we hadn't done in 15 months for one of the associations I belong to, and the whole ordeal of the new OSHA requirements in California. So it's all Cal OSHA, and basically they were giving information that whether you're vaccinated or not, when you work at a restaurant, they're wanting you to go back to wearing the N95 mask. The guest after the 15th, of course, will not need to wear them, but employees. There was a lot of question of, why this is coming out when everything's being released. And it basically came down to that there's a lot of employers that are being sued by the employees saying that they don't feel safe coming back. So what's come out of that and some of the lawsuits is that they've now made requirements. So those requirements went right back to the N95s, which is really unfortunate. One, they're very expensive. And I know a lot of businesses who said, we're just going to still have our staff wear the mask until the public gets completely comfortable going back to the norm. And so they went and printed those masks with their logos, and now they're not going to be able to use them. And the employer needs to provide them. Unfortunate thing about that is, businesses are having a hard time opening already, not being able to find employees. And now we're putting another regulation. And from what I understand, this is going to go through 2022. It'll depend, I guess, if we get a recall from the governor and if someone new comes in and maybe make some changes to that. But as of right now, if you're a business, you need to get onto the Cal OSHA website and you need to download, I think it's 8 pages. You need to read through them, and those need to be applied to your business pretty quickly. I suggest that you do that because if you need to order some of these N95, guess what's going to happen? Price is going to go up. Supply is going to be slim because everyone's going to be doing the same thing at the same time. And definitely touch base with your legal and make sure that you're covered in everything that you're doing and what you can do and ask. But yeah, crazy. I was born and raised here, so I can say it. Crazy California. It is so hard to be in business here.
It's just kind of amazing that comes out at the same time a lot of those emails were released that the great Mr. Fauci wrote that stated that masks were of no use the same week. Isn't it amazing?
I don't. There's so much different information out there. I mean, the best thing that you can do is read the new requirements. But I also suggest, touch base with your legal, because at the end of the day, your legal is going to have to defend whatever you do.
Mm-hmm.
So I suggest, definitely join some associations where they have some, free legal advice that you can get just by belonging to an association, and they're giving you up-to-date information. But yeah, Glenn, I don't know. It's making it harder and harder. And, we are very pro, put some of these things in place, and we're also pro, accessibility, and it's making it harder and harder because then the question comes in is who has to wear a mask, who doesn't. I mean, it's confusing. I can't imagine.
Well, and there have been some precedents set. So again, you may want to go to places like DuckDuckGo, maybe some other search engines that are displaying different types of information, because it doesn't matter if you're talking about Bing, Yahoo, Google. These are all owned by people. They can control things. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you saw, I just read one here this last week where a woman tried suing her husband's employer because they caught COVID after going back to work, and the judge ruled that the business was not responsible for it.
Yeah. Thank goodness for that. Can you imagine?
Mm-hmm.
You know, in California, you can sue for anything. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's the case. I mean, it could be, you know, you have blue eyes and I'm just going to sue you because those eyes are bothering me. It gets to be that silly. And I don't know. We just need to really start looking out for each other and stop this craziness.
Well, and like I think one thing you said is, you know, becoming a closer knit community, talking about business owners, you know, in your same industry, in different industries, and just kind of getting to know what's going on out there. Just because, again, I'm seeing new people coming into the fray every month with regards to web accessibility lawsuits. And all of a sudden you'll have one attorney come in that has one plaintiff. Next month they have two plaintiffs. The next month they have three. So it's just going to continue to grow because it's a revenue stream. And unfortunately, small and mid-sized business is taking the brunt of it.
Absolutely. I mean, we have seen the increase in ADA lawsuits. I mean, it's tenfold. So people really need, and we're seeing a lot of ADA website lawsuits, and people really need to understand what that means and what they need to do. I'm seeing some businesses that are just taking their website off. That's so unfortunate because people aren't out as much as, and everybody's looking at the internet right now. I mean, if there was one training that came out of the pandemic is that everybody knows how to, you know, get on the internet and search for things. What they haven't figured out is that not all of it is true. And it's like anything else. You watch the news, you know, there's a little part of it that's true. And then it's probably driven by someone's agenda. And that's on all sides of it. That's not coming from, you know, a single side. And I think they will all say that about each other. So that being said, everybody, again, I would stress to everybody to touch base as you're writing procedures and employee books going back into the workspace, to please touch base with legal. Don't believe everything you read and hear because everybody's going to have a different interpretation of it. But keep up with it because otherwise it's really going to come back and bite you.
Well, and so the average, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, it's just the average business owner can kind of understand from a business aspect, if you will, these lawsuits. From your aspect of it in the physical, someone would have to get in, go down a strip mall, go into different restaurants, go into chiropractors' offices, go into CPAs, and look around in a wheelchair to be able to find these. Virtually, I can jump onto Google and I can type Italian restaurant San Diego. I have tools that these people have as well that it'll take them 10 seconds as they go down the list on Google. And in an hour, they can have $100,000 worth of lawsuits, $200,000 worth of lawsuits, where it just takes more time when you're actually going to physical business. So it's easier for this mentality of plaintiff to sue people.
Absolutely. The internet is the biggest, it's a double-edged sword. We love it because we get information in a second. But the other side of that is that, unfortunately, people are using that to their advantage because it's very easy to see a violation on Google Earth. I mean, the first thing that I do when someone says that they have a lawsuit is I go right to it. I'll look at their website. And I'm not looking for the things that you're looking for. I'm looking for the pictures that they post or Yelp. You know, it's great because you want those great Yelp reviews and people are taking pictures, but those are being used against you. So I say, in turn, you want to make sure that you're posting pictures that show that you are accessible. Because if you can start pushing those pictures out, guess what? They're going to skip by because they figure if you have those few things, you probably have others. They're not looking for any resistance. There's plenty out there that you can find that don't have that. So that's another thing that I would say to people as they're opening up is take some really fun pictures of your business that's busy and show the pictures of the accessible things that you have and make sure they're right before you take those pictures and then post them.
Yeah. Because literally you're guilty until proven innocent. So I would even take one little step further. There are all kinds of free softwares out there to work with photos. One I like that, and I don't get paid anything for this, it's free to use, it's called Pixlr, Pixlr.com. That you can bring this image up there, make it smaller so it doesn't affect your load speed, and you can type on it. I would maybe type in, look at our great new bar that is accessible for people in a wheelchair. Put those things out in front of you because, again, these are people that are going for low-hanging fruit. easy plaintiff, easy people to sue. So if they start seeing these pictures that they know you're accommodating for them, the odds of them clicking back and going to the next person are quite high.
Right. The reality is the disabled person that's in the wheelchair or that has any other type of disability. I mean, we often talk about wheelchair, but it's not just that. When they're coming in and enjoying your service, those typically are not the people that are suing you. So I often hear people say, I have some of my best customers come in and they have disabilities. I know. And we have good people and then we have criminals. So, the majority of your clients that come in all the time, they're not criminals. But then there's always the few sour grapes that come in and ruin it for everyone. So although I understand the intention of the law is to try to get people to become compliant, I don't think that suing them to make them do it is the way to do it. On the other side, you'll hear the other side say, but these laws have been in place since the 90s, Glenn. I mean, so you've had plenty of time to bring your property up to compliance. But, when you look at the way that it's been enforced through the years, it's really unfair to the business owner. Plain and simple. It's been unfair. The city jurisdictions have not been inspecting on ADA, nor will they. They inspect on the, California Building Code. Yes, there's a lot of the codes that are more stringent than the ADA, but not all. And the interpretation of it. So important that people really understand that you need to make sure that you're with an expert that knows that specific industry. I mean, you don't want me building your house for sure, but I probably could if I YouTubed it enough, right? but I can tell you about accessibility.
Yeah.
In the business or house. So.
And unfortunately for the average business owner out there talking to people, they're depending on whomever they speak with to know what they're doing. And I'm sure we both see it in both of our industries, that the level of people that understand it versus think they understand it versus say they understand it is quite a big difference. You see it from people you refer or ask me to check on, and I see it on a regular basis when I'm talking to developers, when I'm talking to business owners. Yeah, my site's accessible. And in 5 seconds, I can tell them, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's kind of a shame that more people don't know about it. Yeah.
I had a client who called me this morning and they said, listen, we had our place inspected by you because they were sued. And so now I'm having the contractor come in and he's reading through your report and it's like, oh, that inspector doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm going to do it the way I've been doing it for years. So he called me. He said, before I called you, I called to the city and said, this is my situation. And the city said, listen, if your CASP inspector said that's what you need to do, you better do it because that's what we're going to look at. And if we have questions about it, we're going to refer to a CASP inspector. So you might connect your general contractor and your CASP inspector that did the report to make it an educational moment. And that's what we did. It's an older gentleman who's been in probably construction for 30 years, and he is just sure that he's right, even though we are giving him the code. As an owner, you're going to have to really hold them accountable. I mean, I said, okay, then why don't you just write in your contract that if they get sued for any of the work that you've done in regards to accessibility, that you're willing to pay and get it written up by a lawyer that says you're willing to pay for the fixes, all of the settlement monies, and all of the legal fees. I mean, if you're willing to stand by it, well, I'd have to look into that, is what he said. So when you pin them down, all of a sudden they're like, okay, because at least you can come back and say, listen, the state inspector, the state, CASP inspector said it was this, and the city signed off. I did my due diligence, which would be correct. But you're not going to be able to hold thread to it if you went against both the city and the certified specialist. So there you go. I mean, folks, you're going to hear that all the time. I get it. I get it. The contractor's gotten away with it for so many years, not intentionally. He's gotten away with it because the cities were just passing it. And sometimes if they're doing a final inspection and they see these things, they feel bad. They don't want to tell people they need to tear that down and rebuild it. I mean, most of them don't have that kind of money. But it's really causing more harm now. I mean, look at the lawsuits. It's crazy.
Yeah. And neither one, whether it be the physical or the websites, are going away. They're not going to decrease. They're going to continue to increase. And I think a prime example was I had a property management company up in Northern California that reached out to me. That was literally, the lawsuit was filed by an attorney that when you go to his website, he was a divorce attorney. But when divorces were down, they find a way to maybe do some money. Bankruptcies are down, they're going to find another way to generate revenue.
As well as people are looking for ways to generate, and the cost to live here in our state is very expensive. And so, of course, if they're living off a disability revenue, it's not enough. It's just not enough. So Security is not enough. So we're going to find people who have never done it just looking for ways to bring in some more income. And it's hefty income. I mean, if you look at what these people are making, it's very lucrative. Of course, the lawyers always make more than everyone. But if they continue to do it over and over and over, the litigant is going to feel satisfied with the type of income that they're getting, and it's not taxable.
So here, now that we're in June 2021, with things reopening or whatever, what are some pieces of advice or some things you would tell business owners with regards to their business they should be looking at as things open up and people start coming back in more this month?
Yeah, path of travel is the biggest. Path of travel is something that I would say, I know you've probably moved your businesses around or rearranged things. Think about the distance and the path that people would need to take from the entrance to wherever they're going to have that transaction, or they're going to be sitting, to the restroom. Those, you need to look at that. And then if you have parking, you need to look at parking to the door, from the door to wherever the transaction will happen, either at a table or a counter, and then to that restroom. And that is the biggest thing that I would have them look at as they're opening up right now. The second is if someone's coming in and they're saying that they absolutely don't have to wear a mask, and you have something in place, it's going to fall under the same rules of no shoes, no shirt, no service. It's the mask. You're going to see a lot of signs and things like that. And people have that option in their business to deny business to anyone that they don't feel comfortable with. And you're going to see some businesses do that. So those that make sure you understand who's allowed to say that they don't have to wear a mask and who don't. It's very specific to the disability. It's not just anybody who's disabled.
Well, and if you just look at any of the rules that have come about in the last year, it's pretty simple. It's mental issues, it's breathing issues, and stuff like that. So it's not rocket science. You can look at what any rule has come from any state over the last 15 months, and you'll know which type of disabilities that applies to.
Right. It's not the broken leg, which somebody actually tried to use. Is I have a disability, so all the ADA guidelines apply to me, which is not true. But be reasonable as a business. A great bit of advice is a reasonable accommodation. If somebody wants to wear it, let them wear it. If they don't, maybe do the service outside or bring it out. A reasonable accommodation, because remember, not everybody's trying to sue you, but some people will ask for some reasonable accommodation. And as a business, it's customer service. You want to try to, to do that. You would do it for anyone. And so just think about all these cases as discrimination. So if you would go above and beyond for someone else, same thing with anybody.
And one thing I would say to go along with this is understand you're in business for revenue and to make money. And understand that there's a lot of divisiveness with regards to perceptions of this. And I've seen literally on some of the local community posts that I've seen around Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, where some businesses are being very strict about their opinions about this. You have sides on both sides to spend money. If you want to restrict an already down time to whatever percentage it is that believes one way versus the other, it's probably going to be difficult for you to maintain business.
Right. Absolutely.
So sometimes we have to determine, are we in business to make money, or are we in business to have our opinions and our morals and our ethics?
Right. And boy, is that being challenged more than ever, right?
Yeah. I've never seen our country as divided as right now. And it's very sad.
It's very sad. And I don't know what it's going to take to bring that together.
I don't either. It's been kind of interesting because with what I do, I speak with people all over the world, and I hear constantly from people kind of almost laughing at us because you'll say this is what something said here because information is being disseminated differently in different parts of the world on different search engines.
Yeah.
And when you hear, we've heard a lot about what's going on in India recently in the news with regard to COVID, and so I'm talking to friends of mine that are that part of the world. And they're like, well, no, where COVID's going on is the very poor areas where you have a lot of people on top of one another and not doing anything, where we heard different types of medication were being used over there for prophylactics. And so I asked them, like, well, no, those people still aren't getting sick. It's the people that are poor in areas where they're on top of each other. A lot of people living in small areas. Anytime you're watching news, reading stuff online, remember, it's either my opinion, Tracy's opinion, it's someone's opinion. It doesn't make it fact.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And to hear people out, just because you have an opposing opinion, I really would love to see people hear. I want to hear the opposing opinion, and you can be passionate about it, but you don't have to hate me for it if I don't agree. And it's okay. And we should be able to walk away friends. And Glenn, I'm not sure how that's going to happen. I will say that in the world of the disabled, they seem to be coming together, and there's some lessons to be learned with that. That community is really coming together. And I was listening to a group talk the other day of disabled people, and they had completely different opinions, but they still had love for each other, of kindness, and it came from. And I thought, boy, is it that we're going to need the disabled out there advocating for us to say, hey, listen, if we can do it, you can do it. I mean, let's get together and make this work.
I think from what we've had, some people on our guests, some people that I'm talking to with disabilities in different forms I'm in, I think that's a lesson to be learned, is they don't want to be treated differently. They want to be included. So whatever you're thinking about with some of these things opening, keep in mind that as a society, I think we want to be included. We don't want to be treated differently.
Everyone. Everyone.
Yeah.
And that's a great message. And I hope that people start hearing it, especially as they're opening their businesses, and be accommodating. And it's scary, and know that there is support out there. I have become a resource for more than just accessibility in the recent months. So yeah, that's what's going on in the world. What about with website stuff? I mean, are you seeing any new trends, or are we just seeing more of the same over and over? They're doing the same thing, Glenn.
98% of it, 95% of it is just the same thing. It's just they're expanding the scope of who's being sued. If you kind of recall, about 4 years ago, we were at hotels, or 3 years ago, hotels big. Then we went to restaurants. Then we went to we went to financial, then to hotel, then to restaurants. What we've seen now is it just kind of depends on the plaintiff attorney combo. A lot of times they're picking niches and going after people in those niches. And I believe it's because, again, I can go in and type in something on Google, and now I can sue everybody that's an Italian restaurant in the city of Irvine. I can go after everyone that has a winery in Southern California. I think they're doing it just because they can be lazy, personally. Yeah. And once they have a precedent, then they'll know who's going on, and then they can just kind of keep running down the line. Because if Tracy was sued and Glen was sued, then we're going to tell our friends that are in the same industry, we were just sued. We had to settle quickly for this. So it's almost like a herd mentality, maybe.
We definitely see those trends in the architectural world of that. But we're seeing something a little bit different in the sense of how it's written. So usually they would say in the restroom specifically that the restroom items were non-compliant. And if you look at the codes and how the UNRWA was written and all of those things that go with it, they're supposed to be specific about what is, but we're seeing blanket the restrooms not compliant. The tables aren't compliant. They're not saying a specific table, where we used to see specifics, so it was easy to validate the lawsuit. Now they're making it so vague that In some ways, I think that's good and bad. It's vague, so it doesn't help us create a letter of confirmation. But I think maybe for legal, it says, okay, well, what specifically was your client saying that wasn't? You know, were they there? What did they identify? And we're also seeing pictures of a bathroom that's not even the bathroom. And then they'll say, oh, no, that was an example. Well, no. So I think it gives them some leverage in that way. So take a look at those lawsuits. But we see the same trends, Glenn, and it's surprising. I wasn't thinking it was going to happen like that. It makes sense because you can pick a whole bunch of, you know, Italian restaurants, and that's just the example, and go after all of them all at once. And they can be all over, right?
Yeah, and the complaints we're seeing on the website is exactly what you're saying. They're throwing all the mud at the wall, hoping that some of it will stick. Because inevitably, if you don't have a website that's built and managed by people who are doing it right, you're going to have an error. It may be an alt tag. It may be a title tag. It may be, you know, some navigation type of issues. So if they can say, we encounter these issues, now it's up to you, because you're guilty now as a business owner, until you can work with someone that can prove you're innocent and that you meet these criteria, which most sites don't. But I think that's why they're doing it. It just makes it easy for them to file a larger volume of lawsuits when they're copying and pasting the same thing time and time again.
What about, I'll ask you the same question that you had asked me. As people are opening back up, and, you know, they probably really haven't paid attention to their website during the, you know, but as we're opening up and loosening the regulations and rules, and they're going back into work, what should they look at their website and do? I mean, what is the first thing maybe that they should do as they're saying, okay, we're changing? Obviously, they're going to change some of the text on their website, because before it might have said curbside only. It might have, so they're going to be making some changes. But what is something they should do and consider for accessibility?
Well, some of these things are going to be A, about accessibility, B, about Google's new algorithm that they just started rolling out. That is kind of built around some things with accessibility. Do not have a pop-up that comes up on your website that talks about what's going on with your new opening. They don't work for keyboards and blind people. So now that's part of Google's new algorithms. When you have pop-ups and they're looking at it from a cell phone standpoint, when it covers a percentage of your screen, you're going to be penalized by Google by having those pop-ups there, because people are searching on their telephone, sometimes have hard times getting around them if they're sighted. If they're not sighted, they can't get around them. So pop-ups are one of those things that are going to go by the wayside. Okay. So don't put anything on there saying, hey, we're open now, blah, 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 and a pop-up. And then a lot of times, you know, what I tell people is when they say that their site's accessible by someone, is use that tab key on the keyboard. When you land on your website, abc.com, and you highlight that with your mouse, when you can use a mouse, hit the tab key twice. If you don't see skip to main content or whatever, you know they didn't build a website properly for someone that can skip all those buttons and go down to the content. Now, 90% of those skipped contents don't go to the right place, but at least they're trying. So, I mean, that's what I do when I go to a website. If I hit tab key twice and I don't see skip content, it doesn't work. And I guess to go along with those pop-ups is anyone that's put a little piece of code that you see a little person with a wheelchair or a little handicapped person somewhere around your website, that when you click on it, it opens up to a different navigation or some different options. Those are targets now because they do not work. So if you have one of those on your website, you may as well get rid of it, because all that means is A, you knew it was something that needed to happen, and B, you didn't handle it properly.
You know what the unfortunate thing is, Glenn? The person that sold it to them, the business actually trusted what they sold them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes the people who were selling it thought they knew what they were talking about, because the person that sold that tool told them, hey, this works. It takes care of everything, but it doesn't. Right.
And there's not really any way to hold them accountable. They said it was accessible and now it's not. There's no way to hold them accountable. Is that correct?
You know, I don't know that. I know there have been some lawsuits filed against some of the larger ones that some people that I know in the web accessibility industry have actually been called as expert witnesses. So it's going to be interesting in 2021 what happens with these, because you only really have a handful of them that are really out there on most of the websites used. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with these companies, because like you said, they're offering a claim that they can't stand behind. They can't have an expert witness that's outside their company that actually understands it. They can go in and testify that, yes, this is working. This is not creating more obstacles, and this is alleviating obstacles. So I'm going to be interested to see how these all transpire over the year. You have some of these that are built by companies that aren't based in the United States. So what's going to happen with them? I don't know. But I definitely am seeing a lot of lawsuits in the last 5-6 months that all have those plugins, widgets, overlays on them. So it's almost like, my wife and I had this conversation a year ago. It would have been easy for me to use software we have that goes in and look at every site in the state of California that has this tool on there, sell them to an attorney and have them start suing them. Now we like to sleep at night and we don't want to be on that side of the equation, but I'm sure someone else has done the same type of thing. And we're just seeing a lot of lawsuits because you don't need to even go on and find them. I can have software that would find every website in a geographic area that has that software on there.
Wow.
Yeah. So you're a target.
Wow. That's incredible, right? It's just, I wonder if there's anything legal somebody could ask. We should have a lawyer on to ask them that question on, websites specifically. If you purchase something, can you have them sign something that if you get an ADA lawsuit and it's not compliant, you have not touched your website?
Let's talk about that for a minute. We are conditioned in this day and age of June of 2021 that every time you download something on your phone for an app, you scroll to the bottom and check accept. No one reads those.
Right.
I'm willing to bet you when they purchased that online, there was a long-term conditions, and part of it said was you're releasing me from liability, and they have accepted that because we just are so fast-paced. We want to get this and move on. No one takes the time to read these things.
Guilty. Mm-hmm. I've certainly done it. And you look how long it is, and you're like, yeah, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Because everything is gratification.
You have probably deemed them not liable for anything when you purchase their product.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, from a business standpoint, that's smart. From the person who's purchasing it, the customer on that end, I guess, it goes back to read that fine print again.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the one thing I talk about this all the time, and I know you do as well, is have a plan as a business owner. What are you taking care of this year, whether it be physical or website? And keep in mind that $10,250, because it's very important, because you're going to get $5,125 of that back between state and federal tax credits every year. So if you need to spend $20,000, $30,000 on accessibility things, and if there's some that can wait a little bit, if you can plan this for the end of this year, the beginning of next year, you can spend $20,500 real quick. You can actually do that in December, last quarter of this year, first quarter next year, and take all of those credits back to your 2021 taxes, because that tax credit 8826 can go backwards 1 year or be carried forwards 20 years. So do it intelligently and let the government pay for half of what you're doing.
I agree. Absolutely agree. So those credits apply to websites as well, correct?
Yes.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I did not realize that. I will continue to keep marketing that out there to all of our clients that they need to take that into consideration as well.
And they fall under, I believe it's tax code section 44. It's something like that. So it means it's not a one and done thing. You can take that credit every year.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, if they're going to give you credits, take them.
Yeah. And if you're making your business better, maybe you're doing some remodeling to your business because you want to do it aesthetically. Well, get a CASP inspection, make sure it's built according to code, and let the government pay for that part of it.
Agree. Agree. So, we always talk about accommodations of the disabled, but I just want to talk about something fun I heard today about the accommodations of a pig. Pigs. I just heard that I guess when you're a pig farmer and you slaughter pigs and send them out for market, that you have to have an area of 16 by 16 for them to grow up in before they go to slaughter. And California has now said that they want to have the pigs in a 24 by 24. Well, I guess that 15% of the pig purchase or pork purchase is in California. So 15% of that market, and the farmers are not in California that supply the largest supply that. So if they don't raise them in the accommodated space of 24 by 24, they can't sell to California unless it's pre-cooked. So they're choosing to sell it international. So I'm not a big pork eater by any means, but I like my bacon. So I'm going to tell everybody, if you like your bacon, you might want to go out and buy it, because from what I understand is that all the purchase orders that they have now, they can fill. But after that, there's going to be no more in California. So I guess there's not enough farmers in California to, of course, sustain our pig appetite or our pork appetite. So we're accommodating the pigs before slaughter.
Well, you know what's interesting with that? I was just thinking while we were talking about that. So are we doing it, or I should say, are you in the California state doing it across all boundaries? Or are we doing this to pay for someone that, or to help somebody that's maybe a donor for somewhere? Because I believe you can still eat Wagyu beef in California, can't you?
Yeah, I'm so confused by this, but I know, I belong to the Restaurant Association, and they're all up in arms, especially the barbecue people, as you can imagine, because that's a good portion of what they do, pork and beef. And so California we're going to have a quick shortage here of pork. So the restaurants are changing their menus. And
well, you know how Wagyu beef is raised, right?
No.
It's raised in a small area where they don't develop as much muscle, so they can't move. It's massaged and fed like this. So Wagyu beef are raised in very small areas to contain them, so they don't build muscle. So are we then going to start looking at catfish, at shrimp, and stuff like this that are raised in farms instead of raised in the wild? I'm sure they're being mistreated.
It's a slippery slope, Glenn. It's a slippery slope. So I think when they start making regulations like this, and I've never been to a pig farm. Don't know how they're cute. I've watched, Charlotte's Web. I'm a Wilbur fan, but I didn't know that this was a thing and that they were mistreating, or that they thought that 16 by 16 wasn't enough for the pig. I don't know what the deal is, but I'm sure there's something political behind it, because there always seems to be. But yeah, that's the thing is California wants you to accommodate the pig a little bit more than the 16 by 16 that every other state has agreed to. And so buy your bacon, people. Buy your bacon.
Well, and I would say to one more level with that is, you know what? Contact one of your congressmen, contact someone like this, because these rules are based on very little. I grew up on a farm, and yes, we raised pigs. Gosh, I don't want to say this because it sounds so disgusting, but there's a reason why you slit a pig's throat instead of shooting it in the head, because a pig has a brain about this big. So, I mean, if someone's like that and you see how happy they are and stuff like that, it's almost kind of like you talk about stupid happy. So, I mean, I would be very interested to see what type of studies, since the governor of California has always talked about science last year, what science is there surrounding the size of a pen a pig should be.
Yeah, I don't know, but that was the big message I got from some of the association yesterday, was that something passed in California. I haven't even looked all of it up, except that everybody was saying, go buy your bacon.
Well, look at this from a supply and demand standpoint, if you will. What's the price of a gallon of gas in California versus Arizona or Nevada? And you know why that is? A filling station in the state of California cannot buy gasoline that wasn't produced by a refinery in the state of California. So you limit supply. When demand goes up, increase pricing. I think you're going to see the same thing with pork.
Oh, absolutely. You're going to be able to get it from some of the smaller farmers in California, but
Mm-hmm.
the cost is going to be just
Mm-hmm.
outrageous. So here we go again. And I guess there's something in the requirements now that they're looking at the size of pens for baby chicks. So
Yeah, they passed that law 2 years ago.
oh, they did. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
because the other
About
department.
raising chickens and the size of the farm and stuff like this. And yeah, it was interesting when you were reading the law and the proposal and stuff like this, because of course, like most of the things you see on the ballot, when you voted no, it meant yes. And when you voted yes, it meant no. But yeah, that was on the ballot in California in 2019.
Okay, so you grew up on a farm.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I was born and raised right here in San Diego. We didn't have a farm. So when you hear some of this stuff and you know how, livestock is raised, and you've got, cows and pigs and goats and whatever else you had in there, which I love, but what do you think of that, since you were raised on a farm? I mean, is there justification to a lot of this, or
Not a lick in bit. I mean, when you're not going to mistreat the animal. If you mistreat the animal, you're not going to be in business long, because you're not going to have sustainable, inventory and stuff like that. But when you look at these things, and one thing I always find interesting, because it was beaten in my head from my father from the time I could barely walk, because we always had cattle, is you talk about this grass-fed beef, how much better it's for you in grass-fed beef. Well, typically when you're growing hay, growing something for them to eat off of or to sell, you're fertilizing it, you're putting pesticides on it, you're doing stuff like that. So why is grass-fed any better than corn? Because we grew up finishing, if you will, cattle on corn your last 90 to 120 days before you slaughtered them, because it would create more marbling in your meat. Yeah. So you have different opinions, like we said everywhere else. My opinion isn't gospel. Yeah. It's just my opinion. But yes, growing up with animals and stuff like that, and raising them, selling them, butchering them, it's just kind of a way of life for some people. And some people have a hard time understanding stuff if they're not, like you said, raised by it. I would have a hard time understanding some things that people did growing up in California, just as though like they have a hard time understanding the way I grew up in Missouri. So
it's okay not to know, but if I really wanted to know, I might be needing to visit some of the places that are really doing it and then make my decisions from there. Mm-hmm. I learned a little bit about even when you're growing crops and things like that. When my son went to college in South Dakota, he was very confused about the whole organic thing, because he's like, the planes that are spraying the fields are right next to the planes. So if there's a wind, the organic ones are getting sprayed too. So just so y'all know, that's happening. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, no, I'm going to show you a picture. And so you have this big thing where it says organic and right next to the other fields. Well, it's moving.
Well, and you mentioned that. And as we start talking about it, anytime they want to start doing this for one animal, it's just ridiculous. There's somewhat financial behind the thing, because it was interesting on my last podcast we just did an hour ago, found out that our guest was from southern Missouri, not too far away from where I grew up in. And the biggest employer in that area was one of our big name chicken companies that we all have purchased their chicken in a grocery store. Those chickens are raised in very small pens. It's a very efficient operation and stuff like this, but we still buy that nationwide. So how do you start with one animal and not extrapolate to everyone, or before you realize that this is kind of stupid?
It's a slippery slope is what I'm saying is, so they start with this, and before you know it, it's going to go to all of it. And then the produce people at the association were saying, everybody will start buying more vegetables. The problem is we don't have enough land to sustain for everyone to be a vegetarian. And so we're still going to need to be raising, beef and pork and all of those things. So I don't know. I mean, we kind of got on the subject of, accommodation, and this all came about. No, I love it. But it came about as the accommodation for the pig, right? I mean, they're trying to accommodate someone's request that they think that the pig needs more room. I mean, I have no idea how much room a pig needs. That's not my thing. I don't know where that's coming from.
Well, some of the main reasons why you keep pig pens somewhat small is pigs root, dig, and tear things up and destroy things or whatever. It's just what's in their mentality. It's what they enjoy doing. So you try and condense things down a little bit to minimize your risk of losing someone like that. So, I mean, that, and again, this may sound inhumane, but it's why they used to put rings in pigs' noses when they were young to make it so they couldn't dig and they wouldn't do it constantly, so it would irritate them.
Ah. Is that kind of where the phrase then, when your parents would come in and go, your room looks like a pig pen?
Yep. Or saying, you've got a ring in your nose that someone leads you around by. They used to do that with pigs.
Ah, I didn't know that. Yeah, I just thought it was a way to walk with them or something. I didn't know what the whole thing was. But yeah, that makes sense. You don't want them to dig, and they're using their nose to do the digging.
Well, I think one thing that these states need to understand is, again, this is a large state, but it's not economically feasible when you talk about production and consumption. I hear about California has this big economy because they consume a lot because there's a lot of people, but there's no way to produce all the chicken, all the beef, all the turkey, all the vegetables that this state would consume. There's just too much consumption and not enough proper climate to raise all these things.
Right. Well, I understand that the pig farmers in other states have said, I'm sorry, we're not able to accommodate the pig in the pen that you are requiring, so we're no longer going to sell to you. So I'm sure all of our pig farmers in California are happily expanding their pig size, but the pork is going to be very expensive. Mm-hmm. So there you go, Piggy. You got your accommodation in California. You got a little bit more moving room to tear up, right? Mm-hmm. They're just going to tear up that pen and dig. And what are they digging for? Are they digging for roots? Are they really digging? What are they digging for?
They're just digging for a way to get out. They're digging for something else. They're just digging because they enjoy it. It's kind of like a dog enjoys digging a hole and stuff like that. It's just innate in different animals.
Didn't know that. Never knew that the pigs dig.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's going to be interesting how. And the one thing I would say to anybody, and when you're looking at this, is anytime you're looking at something like this changing, is follow the money, because there's a reason why they're doing it, and it probably 9 times out of 10 isn't for the reason they're saying it, unfortunately.
Well, I think right now that's in everything. It's so prevalent in our face, right? It's in our face. Mm-hmm. We're looking at with vaccines. We're looking at with the our little piggies. With everything, all these new regulations that we have, it seems when you dig just a little bit farther, we find that there's more. But
speaking of accessibility animals, Tracy, we're just about out of time. Share my favorite story of what is a legitimate service animal.
Oh, yeah. Everyone loves this one. So one is a dog, which I think most people know. You'll see in the seeing eye dogs, and not all dogs can be service animals. So that's one. But the favorite one is the miniature horse. People go, what? A miniature horse? Well, there's really only a few in the United States that are in service, but they are great service animals. I've actually had the chance to see one and in action, an accessibility expo. Before the pandemic, and you don't see many of them, but they're great. But they have to be a very specific size. I mean, from the top of their head to the ground, the length, how they're groomed. It's very specific. It's not just any miniature horse. So they're not wagging their tails at the table, and they're very well mannered, and but they do a great job. But yeah, so no peacocks, no kittens. Those are all emotional support animals, which are not service animals, but a dog and a miniature horse.
How did that come about?
Well, so it's my understanding that a politician, and I won't name names in any and all of this, but they had a son or daughter, I don't remember which it was, that had a disability, and somehow got that through pretty easily without any resistance. And then that became the law. I mean, I think that there could be some other animals, but it was specific to a politician who had a disabled child. And that's how it made its way through. But you don't see many of them. I don't think you'll see many of them. But I love hearing all the stories of Airlines, it's funny. Airlines are the funniest ones that get all of the people want to bring the craziest, like guys like his emotional support snake. Okay, I'm afraid of snakes. I don't care if they're nice. They're just, no, you're not sitting next to me with your emotional support snake. It's not happening. It is not happening. And then they do that movie Snakes on a Plane. Can you imagine? So no, miniature horse and a very specific dog. Yeah. Not a little chihuahua though.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
great times how our lives are influenced by people for maybe short-sighted reasons.
Yeah. Again, when you dig back, that miniature horse came back to politics or money.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thanks, Tracy. It's always great having some time to talk. We have some great guests lined up for the upcoming weeks, so we look forward to seeing everyone. Just so you know, Tracy, for some reason there was some type of glitch, and so we didn't stream live to Facebook or LinkedIn. We did to YouTube, so I'll send you over links to the video, and then we can share them to everybody so they can watch them at their convenience.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. Great to see you, Glenn.
All right, we'll see everyone next week.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.